listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast about business, marketing, growth, strategy, staff, clients, babies, and marriage. I'm Christina. This is Peter, and we are the founders and leaders of CIPR Communications. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm still good.
Oh, good. Just checking in. You got to do that when you're married constantly.
It's true. That's good advice.
You got to do that when you're thinking about your marketing budget as well, which is kind of what we're talking about today. Oh, segue.
Wow.
Yeah, I just threw it out there. But all joking aside, today we're kind of talking about the title of today's podcast is Review the Process, which really is, I think, a way of saying, okay, so you set a marketing budget, you're off, you're executing some tactics, and now it's time to have a process for reviewing your investment and understanding whether it's doing what you want it to be doing. So I'm going to first jump in here and say that, first of all, I would say that you need to give any kind of marketing initiative a good quarter before really understanding whether it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. But I say that with some caveats in the sense that like there's some things you should be doing in the first, obviously, days, in the first weeks, in the first month, to be making sure that things are actually like working properly. And there's some adjustments that could be made in that first period of time. But really it takes a quarter for, I would say, for things to be running and fully kind of optimized before they're really firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important too. And I think for me, I am definitely the personality type where I don't want to say I'm rigid, but like I like knowing, I like knowing a number and I like the predictability and sticking to it.
Yeah.
But for me, when I think about reviewing the process, whether it's keeping marketing tactics going or not, but it's like just being really hyper aware of your industry, your business, your competitors, and what's going on. Like, I mean, 2020 was obviously very interesting from a marketing perspective.
Yes,
Lots of pivoting, lots of challenges, lots of people cutting stuff off because they didn't really understand what was going to happen to their cash flow. But then also this kind of cycle back to, okay, now I need to invest in digital. And that year is extreme, but I think every year there are going to be things that get thrown at you from a marketing perspective that are not necessarily in your budget or not necessarily things that you've considered that you need to build in some flexibility to. I think about like my old corporate life and having a specific budget and having some leaders who gave me a specific budget, and it was my role and responsibility to move that budget around accordingly based on the objectives I had, based on what we were trying to do from a marketing and communications perspective. And then I had other leaders that, had that same budget, but were very prescriptive in terms of, I want this much in this bucket, this much in another bucket. And I don't think I really need to explain which way was easier for me to succeed. Because that flexibility and the trust in, all right, I have this budget and I'm going to work accordingly within it, is important. And obviously I created some, lines of sight and trackable metrics, but you for those of us that love a spreadsheet and love the line items to look the same every month, a marketing budget, you need to just have that flexibility.
Yeah. And I'll say too that I think this is something we haven't really talked about yet, but when you're thinking about putting forward marketing and communications tactics, strategies and tactics, the great thing about digital, especially in particular, is the ability to track things at many different levels. And so when you're setting things up, I mean, the first month of setup, really, when you're starting to execute tactics, is all about making sure that you have the right tracking codes in place, that you have a tracking phone number if you're doing PPC ads, that you understand, like maybe like we use Google Data Studio and we actually add goals in there. And so like a goal might be, a conversion, a goal might be a sale, A goal might be a newsletter sign up. A goal might, like, there's many different ways
Download.
to track downloads. It could be just traffic to a website if you're doing a brand strategy. So I mean, obviously, I mean, this, again, broken record, go back to what your strategy is and what your actual goals are and what you're tracking. But part of reviewing the process is understanding, early on, is all your tracking working properly? Is it tracking the right things? Is there adjustments that need to be made to tracking? Are you seeing micro conversions? Like, are people, like, I look at things like, for example, on a website, I just reviewed a website with a prospect where I did his website in comparison to two other companies, and it was like, their average time on their website was 20 seconds and 1.2 pages per visit, where their competitors' average time on website was over 5 minutes and 5 to 6 pages per visit. So, those are really important metrics to review to understand whether your website is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Are people actually engaging in your website and your content in a proper way, right? So, I mean, this is again where I think having a level of sophistication comes in, and a lot of other things you could be doing. For example, like A/B testing. Like, we do a lot of LinkedIn lead generation programs for clients where we have 3 different messages that go out, and within 2 weeks we're cutting off the message that's getting the worst response rate and doubling down on the one that's getting the best response rate, and then adjusting the middle one to try to make it better. And we're constantly A/B testing to sort of really kind of optimize and hone in on what's working best. And same thing on the pay-per-click side of things. Like, there's a constant optimization that's happening in the back end, removing things that aren't working as well. Places where you might be getting clicks, but you're getting an expensive cost per click. There's a lot of really technical things you can be adjusting throughout all of your kind of tactics to make sure that you're kind of fine tuning as you go, right? So
Yeah, I just think there should never be an instant where you haven't reviewed a tactic. And I think sometimes when we get into the thick of a marketing program and the day-to-day and the last thing you want to do is go through a report and make adjustments, and like there's this kind of, I feel like, innate thing within us that you just want to keep following the strategy and moving on and going forward. But whether your marketing tactic was going to an event, like, have some measurables. Like, why did you go to that event? Whether it's virtual or not, like, was it to make new connections? Was it to get signups for your company? Was it to meet a new like, and then did you achieve those things? And same with social media. Okay, what's the metrics? What are the deliverables? Do we need to be on all 8 channels, or are we only seeing a return on 2? And I would just encourage everyone, no matter what it is, the billboard that you bought, the radio ad you did, the PPC campaign, the SEO, like, all of those things, you should be getting a report every month. And you should be, to your point, at least quarterly reflecting and going, is this still the right path for us? Is this getting me my return on investment? Is it the right tactic, but maybe the wrong message? Is it the right tactic, but maybe the wrong target audience? But do that with everything. Like, I think so many times in a pre-COVID world, we'd have clients with these huge trade show budgets and event budgets. And for some of them, that's the bread and butter, and they do the most kind of connection and work and sales there. And for some, it's like, well, why did you go there? What did you get out of it? And they can't articulate that. And it's like, well, there's like $25,000.
A lot of money that goes into those trade shows, right? Yeah. If you're not getting a very clear return on investment, like, you could put a lot of marketing dollars, with the 25,000, whatever you spend on a trade show, into some other tactics that could generate literally 10 times the amount of return potentially. I'm not throwing out numbers, but really gotta be thoughtful about that, right?
Well, and even, the age-old question of the billboard, and I think Brad and I especially have debated billboards for multiple clients before. And, what's the goal? Is the goal increased brand awareness? Is the goal, sometimes the goal too is, there's some board members that really have that pride and want to show the community in a really public forum. If the goal is driving tickets, how much are you going to see on a billboard? Or is there some sort of direct link or a different phone number or something where you can actually begin to track that outdoor advertising? So there's ways to slice and dice it so you actually can understand even your traditional marketing, if it's being effective or not.
Yeah.
And that can help you inform your decisions for next time around, but also be able to start to pave your case internally for a larger digital spend
Right.
or a larger spend altogether.
Yeah. And this is an area where, I mean, if you're doing stuff in-house, it may be worthwhile for you to like think about a budget for having an agency like us and maybe paying us a small retainer amount to kind of do some auditing of kind of your tactics and how you're tracking things and sort of help you to understand whether you're actually getting a return on investment. Again, like I'm going to think about, one client we had where literally we were generating like thousands and thousands of clicks for her in terms of, and it was a new product, a new service, I should say. And literally like the click-through rate was amazing. So, that told me that the ads were doing what they were supposed to be doing in terms of people were clicking on the ad, they were getting to the landing page, they were, obviously spending time on the website, but they weren't actually getting sales. Then it's like, okay, so we're getting some of the conversion, like some of the conversion sort of metrics are working, but then the other ones aren't. And so it's like, okay, we need to really think about the landing page and what we're sending them to. And in the case of this particular client, it was a couple things. It was, I think there was some timing challenges in terms of just like COVID and uncertainty and things like that. But it was also like made me step back and think we should be doing more education first. So really what we should be doing is, really driving education first and making people kind of read and understand. And then maybe through retargeting, we should be doing more lead generation. Like, okay, you've been educated now, now you're ready to make a purchase and understanding that path to purchase, right? And in that case, we didn't do a strategy first, unfortunately, with that client. And and the client was very understanding. And the client even said, like, I'm on the verge of closing many of these deals. I've had lots of inquiries, but it's going to take me a while to do that. And so, she put a pause on everything, which was just fine. And she said, I'm going to focus now. I've got all these leads from this, but I haven't closed any sales. So I'm going to focus my efforts now on closing these things, right? And that's okay, right? And I mean, we've done that on the lead generation side where we've, used LinkedIn to generate a ton of leads, maybe over a 3-month campaign. And we didn't necessarily close all those sales, but we have a long sales cycle. So it's like, okay, let's pause that for a while. Let's focus now on what we can do to convert those and turn those into sales, right? And then once those things turn into sales, then now we can turn on more lead generation, right? So I think that reviewing and really having a sophisticated review and an informed review process will really help you to kind of hone in on your budget and how to maximize it.
Yeah, and I would say the next time your staff person or your agency sends you the monthly review of the website stats, of the PPC, of the whatever, look at it and dive into it. And don't be afraid to ask questions about it. I think all agencies can kind of giggle at the fact that, okay, who read the report this month and who didn't? And is this all for naught? But for us, it's something we continue to do. And actually, Marjana from our team has done an exceptional job this last quarter, really tuning up our process internally around reporting. So not only is she putting her arms around every different marketing tactic and communications tactic for each client, but she's also coming back and meeting internally with the project manager to kind of make some decisions on what could we do better the next month, what's effective, what isn't. And those conversations we obviously have with clients too, but it's always interesting when the client is the one that comes with questions. And I think those are always rewarding to know that they've read the report and are diving in and invested in it. So, every job I've ever worked in, a boss has always said, okay, well, I want the report on how this did on my desk. And I think you always wonder, what file folder it went into and if they ever looked at it again. And like, don't be that boss. Like, look at the report and start to make some educated, I guess, moves in your marketing plan around that, including your budget and moving money to where it's making the most sense.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, because I think a lot of the time those reports become really
overwhelming, maybe, or
yeah,
intimidating. Yeah.
and confusing. And I think anyone, whether it's staff or agency, should be willing to sit down with you and go through it in depth. I can think of a few clients in the last year where we'd send reports and they were the first to admit, this is over our head. Can we meet? And month by month, you'd go over it. And, now a year, 6 months later, they don't need that meeting because they're reading and digging deep and diving in and then coming back with some awesome questions or responses. So don't be afraid, right? You've hired an expert. It's just like when Adidas sends us our bookkeeping and I go, what does this mean again?
Yeah.
You're not the expert.
Yeah, and you can ask the same question every month, and it happens sometimes, and that's okay. This is not what you do for a living day to day, right? So it's not really your job to understand it, but yeah. And again, with review the process, it's like, let the data help you make decisions. Don't make decisions based on your gut feeling, because the data is available. And so, we really work hard as an agency to be a data-driven organization and to make the data-driven decision making. And that's the way to do it, and that's the way to succeed. And I'm just going to leave this final thought is that, when we think about developing strategies and then starting to execute tactics, I really think about this kind of process in a 6-month kind of timeline, where it's like maybe we're spending a month or two, right? Doing the strategy, the tactical plan, kind of getting everybody on the same page. Then the next month really is about sort of setting up the tactics and setting up all your metrics and all your data and reporting and how you're going to report and all of that kind of stuff. And then really into the next 2 months are really about starting to execute the campaigns and optimizing the campaigns. And then, so if you think about a 6-month period, by the end of that 6 months, you're probably at a place where you're now running all your campaigns and you're pretty close to fully optimize them. And if everything's working as the way it should, then now is the time to think about start scaling the things that are working the best. So like, hey, PPC is, creating a great return on investment, let's ramp up the PPC spending. And if we need to take budget from somewhere else to do that because this is generating such a great return, well, so be it. Or maybe, hey, you know what, let's find more budget because this is working so great, right? Or let's turn this off because it just turns out it's not working, right? So, you really got to think about it as this is an investment over time. And to get it fully optimized and working 100%, it's going to take some time. No, the best marketing person in the world, no matter what, and we work with some of the greatest, can't just like sort of turn something on and it'll work perfectly right away. It just does not work that way.
I wish.
It'd be great, but it's just not reality.
Oh, well, there you have it. So remember, review, and don't be afraid to ask questions, I think is a big one.
Yeah. And thanks for listening. If you like our podcast, please like, comment, and share. It would help us a lot.
Appreciate and subscribe too.
And subscribe, yes. Sorry.
3, 2, 1.